What is up, y'all? Odeed, aka Big Jake here once again, and today we are going to cook a USDA Select Walmart brisket on a pellet smoker. So in most stores, they have 3 grades of beef in which you can buy. You can buy Select, you can buy Choice, or you can buy Prime. And out of the 3, Select is probably the lowest grade, and this is what we have here from Walmart. So this brisket is almost 13 pounds and cost me $37. What we are going to do is we are going to take this lower grade of beef and see if we can make a tender and flavorful brisket. Now before we get started, here is one little tip when you're picking out your briskets. Pick it up, and this is the flat area, by the way. The smaller area is the flat, the larger area is the point. And if you bend it here and it's very pliable, that means that it could turn out as a tender brisket. So this actually, as you can see, is a very nice brisket as far as how it feels. So let's go ahead and open up the package and we'll start trimming it up. All right, let's go ahead and get the package open. I like to wipe these down, try to get all the purge off of them. All right, first and foremost, we have this little piece here that's kind of sticking out. We're gonna get rid of that. Basically what we're going for here is we're gonna try and make this as aerodynamic as we possibly can, because we're gonna be cooking this on a smoker, and specifically a pellet smoker, which kind of works like a convection oven, and you're gonna have a lot of heat circulating around. So we wanna make this, again, as aerodynamic as we possibly can. We have kind of like this piece sticking out here. We have this huge piece of fat right here. We're gonna try and cut this down to about a 1/4 inch here on this side. That way when you slice the brisket, you will have a nice thin piece of rendered fat instead of like big chunks of fat you gotta eat. We also wanna keep some fat on here because on a pellet smoker, the heat is coming from the bottom of the pellet smoker, and we are gonna cook this with this side facing down towards the heat. That way it protects the meat from the heat. We got like this little lip here that we're gonna get rid of. There's this little piece here. This is mostly just like silver skin and fat. We're gonna get rid of that. Again, we wanna try and make it nice and aerodynamic and symmetrical, which of course is hard to do on a brisket because it's not a very aerodynamic or symmetrical piece of meat. Looks like I got a little too close there, but it's not the end of the world. Happens. This one's pretty thin here on the back already, so we're not gonna have to go too crazy, which is nice. You kind of never really know what you're gonna get with your brisket until you open the package up. I think this part here is actually fairly good. We're gonna leave it as is for now. We're gonna flip it over and see what we got on the other side. Get rid of this piece here. You can kind of lift the brisket up like this. You could get rid of all the silver skin here if you want. I'm personally not really gonna worry about it. This little corner right here, we're gonna get rid of that. Kind of just try and round it off as best we can. There's excess fat over here in the corner. We're gonna get rid of that. Got this hard decal fat here. I'm gonna trim that down. I'm not gonna trim it completely off or gouge into it, but just basically get it, again, as aerodynamic as we can. And over here on this end, you kind of have this meat that looks like it's a little like kind of cooked already. I think when they split the carcass, what they do is they wash this half off with warm water and it kind of cooks it. So we're gonna cut that off completely. So yeah, it's kind of got a nice, smooth, kind of like flowing look to it, which is what we want. We've cut a lot of the corners out. We've cut a lot of the fat out that we don't want. We flip over to the other side again, see if there's anything. This is a little thick on this end right here. I'm gonna try to get rid of some of this. You can do as little or as much of this as you want. I mean, you can throw it on the smoker without doing any of this if you don't want to. All right, I think as far as cutting it, that's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I got most of this fat here kind of shaved down pretty thin. I tried to get rid of all the things that were really like sticking out on the edges. Seems fairly aerodynamic. This side as well. This is kind of cut down here. Again, you could get rid of this silver skin if you want, but I'm just gonna leave it. One thing I do notice, and this is the first USDA Select brisket that I've had, is there is not a whole lot of fat in the point. So we're gonna cook this fairly low and slow and see how it goes. But of course, for now, we gotta put some rub on it. All right, let's go ahead and throw some rub on this thing. I have a shaker here with a mix of mostly just salt and pepper. There's a little bit of paprika in here, some chili powder, some onion powder, and some garlic powder, but mostly just salt and pepper. And you want to liberally, but as even as you can, get it on the brisket. Kind of pat it in, get the sides. Of course, you could inject this. You could put mustard slather on it if you want. For me, I just like a basic rub of mostly just salt and pepper. Flip it over, get the other side. All right, that's really all you got to do. Now we are going to wrap this. You can wrap it in saran wrap or foil or both, and then I'm going to stick it in the fridge and basically let the rub permeate the meat for 24 hours, and we will put it on the smoker in the morning. We will be back. All right, y'all, it is the next day. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I got the brisket on the pellet smoker, and let me talk to you about my setup. So first off, I am cooking at 245 degrees, which is a low and slow enough temperature that we can really get the brisket meat to kind of like break down and become tender, but hopefully high enough that it renders the fat off as it cooks. As you can see, I also have a water pan here in the bottom with some water in it, and basically what I want this to do is I want the water in here to evaporate, create some steam, and create a nice moist environment for this brisket to cook in, to keep the brisket moist, and this will hopefully make it to where I won't have to mop or spritz or anything like that. As you can see, the brisket is on the top rack. If you don't have a top rack with your pellet smoker, go ahead and put it on the bottom rack, and then use something small, like a small bread pan or something like that, to put some water in it to create that moist environment. I'm also using my ThermoWorks smoke so that I can check the temperature on the brisket, and specifically in the flat. Basically, the flat is the tougher part of the brisket. The point's a little more moist, and it's going to be more tender and probably done faster than the flat. The flat is the part that we really need to break down and get tender. So I closed the lid. We're going to go ahead and cook it for about 6 hours, which will be about 2 o'clock my time. And then we will see where it's at on the internal temperature. We'll see what the bark looks like at that point. We'll see if the rub has set to the meat, and then we'll kind of go to the next step from there. On briskets, time is kind of like a guide, but then when you get to those certain times, then you check temps, and then you check feel, and look is actually the most important thing. So that's kind of how you get to where you want to go. Once again, we're going to cook it for about 6 hours right now. I'm hoping at that point that I'm at an internal temperature of somewhere around 165 degrees, but we'll see. So yeah, lid is closed. I'm not going to open it up. I'm not going to spritz it. I'm not going to mop it. I'm just going to let it ride and see how it goes. So anyways, we will be back. All right, y'all, it is now almost 3 p.m. The brisket has been on for a total time of about 8 hours. And I hit a stall about an hour and a half ago at 150 degrees. And for those of you that don't know, sometimes a larger piece of meat like this, when you are cooking it, it'll stall, meaning that the internal temperature will not rise anymore. But as I mentioned earlier, time and temperature are only kind of two guides when you're cooking a brisket or any other kind of big piece of meat like this. You ultimately want to go by look and feel. So let's open up the lid and see what it looks like. Show you guys what it looks like. Look at that. It's got a nice color to it, and believe it or not, it does look like it stayed pretty moist. The fat's rendered off well. And I'm pretty happy with it. So even though it's only at a temperature of 150 degrees internal, The crust looks like it's set. The rub looks like it's set. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this thing, and I'll tell you about how I wrap here in just a second. So once again, we are gonna go ahead and wrap this thing, and I personally like to use a foil pan, put the brisket inside of the foil pan with foil on top. And my personal reason for doing this is that once this thing is done cooking, you will get all of the au jus or rendered off fat into this pan here, and then you can separate basically the au jus from the grease or the fat, and then you can pour it over your slices. Now, of course, you can wrap it in foil. You can wrap it in a foil pan like this. You can use butcher paper. You can use many different things. I personally like the foil pan idea. Also, at this point, I'm gonna take the foil pan out of the bottom rack and put the brisket on the bottom rack. Now take the top rack out, because we do not need any moisture inside of the smoker at this point. Also, while you're wrapping this up, you could always put some beef broth in here, or any kind of mixture that you want. I'm just gonna wrap it just like this and let that fat render off and basically baste the meat as it cooks. All right, close the lid. Let me talk to you guys what temperature we're gonna go to next. All right, now that the brisket is wrapped in the foil pan with the foil on top, sitting on the bottom rack, we are gonna let it ride to an internal temperature of 200 degrees. And then once we get to that point, then we will start probing the flat for tenderness. Because once again, temperature and time are your guide, but look and feel are the way that you know your brisket is done. And because this is a select brisket, it's probably gonna take a little more cooking time to get it nice and tender. So I'm gonna start probing it at 200, but I'm guessing around 205 degrees internal is when I'm gonna take it off. So we shall see. We'll be back. All right, y'all, 2 hours in after wrapping it, it has reached 200 degrees internally. I figured once I wrapped it, it would get past the stall and it would kind of like gain momentum again and take off and come temp up to 200 degrees fairly quickly, and it did. Let's go ahead and open up the lid here. Take the foil off. Let's pull the probe out here. And then in the flat area, you just start checking it for tenderness. To be honest, it's farther along than I thought it would be, and it feels fairly tender. Right in here, it's a little tough. So, put the probe back in. Put the foil back on. And we're gonna take it up to an internal temp of 205 degrees and then check it again. All right, y'all, 10.5 hours and the brisket is done. I took it up to 205 and it felt pretty good when I probed it in the flat. So we took it off. We are gonna let it rest. And one thing I've been doing lately, just for fun, is I've been leaving the ThermoWorks smoke probed into the flat while it rests, because you'd like it to get down to a temp of like 150, maybe even 140. I'm gonna let it rest for an hour and then see where the temp is at, and yeah, we'll be back. All right, y'all, I let it rest for about an hour and 15 minutes, got it down to a temperature of about 155 internal. I think that should be good. Let's take the foil off. Let's get it on the cutting board here. Yeah, look at that, it looks pretty nice. Fairly nice jiggle to it, not bad. Overall, it's got a nice color to it, nice bark on it. Now we're going to take this grease separator, take all of this au jus that I was talking about that is in this foil pan here. So now we have all this au jus that we can use, and this will separate while we cut the brisket up. One thing to notice too, on a brisket, you can still see the grain here running this way, so we are going to cut this way against the grain as we cut it. Ladies and gentlemen, $37 brisket. What did I say, 10.5 hours? About an hour and 15-minute rest. Here we go. Oh, that slice is actually pretty nice. And yes, I am using a Down-Strong brisket knife on my $37 brisket. All right, let's check a piece out here. It looks pretty good, actually. Not bad at all. Holds up under its own weight. It looks pretty juicy. Wow, pulls right apart. Let's take a taste of it. So yeah, take a look at it. I mean, it looks pretty good. The fat rendered out fairly well. It pulls pretty nice. See what it tastes like. You know, it's really not that bad. Probably better than I thought it was gonna be. Nice flavor, very tender. It's much more tender than I thought it would be. Overall, for a $37 brisket that flat, it's pretty good. Let's keep cutting and then get to the point. All right, let's get back to cutting it. And actually my lovely assistant slash taste tester just had it. She said it tastes really good, just as good as any other brisket. So that's pretty cool. So again, I mean, it does look pretty nice, I gotta say. Not bad at all. Pulls pretty well. Oh, it's hot. Take another taste of it. That is pretty darn good. Yeah, honestly, it's really not bad. Fat rendered off well. It's got a nice smoke ring. It looks good. I'm pretty impressed. Here's the point. Fat rendered off nicely. It's nice and juicy. You go, Walmart. You go, Sam, whatever your name is. What's the Walmart guy's name?
Walton.
Sam, you go, Sam Walton. Yeah, look at the old juice running out of there. Old Sam Walton. Look at you, Sam Walton, with your $37 brisket. Let's check it out. A little bit of the point. Man, USDA Select ain't bad. I gotta say, not bad at all. All right, y'all, so here it is overall. I gotta say this thing is pretty good, especially for 37 bucks. The point, I would say, is pretty much perfect. I have no problems with it at all. The flat, I'd maybe give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10, somewhere around there. It's pretty good. And then of course, if you wanna kick up your brisket to the next level after you're done cooking it in the foil pan like this, you just take this grease separator, just add a little au jus like that. There you go. This is ready to go. All right, y'all, my name is Odeed. Thank you for watching, and it's time for us to eat. Peace.